the list of countries. Every year some brave soul gets up and arrives at the list. Parthians, Medes, Elamites, residents of Mesopotamia, Cappadocia. The congregation starts to shift. Someone coughs. The reader survives. And we treat this list as an obstacle, as a speed bump on the road to the real sermon. But I believe this list is the sermon, and we speed over it. We rush past it, and in doing so, we do to those names exactly what the world, what the empire was doing to the people who bore those names. Nations, nation after nation, conquered by the Roman Empire, by Caesar. Dismissing them, oh, they're too hard to pronounce, not worth the effort. So I have a confession. I've been forgetting the Parthians, the Medes, the Elamites, the residents of Mesopotamia, the long list for most of my life. I wasn't sure how to preach this sermon today, the intersection of Pentecost with Memorial Day, until I dwelled on this list, the names we rush over or even ignore, and not even curious about. So here's the geography. Parthians, Medes, Elamites, anyone know? Iran, Mesopotamia, Iraq, Cappadocia, Pontus, Phrygia, Turkey, Cyrene, this is a tough one, Libya, Egypt, Arabia, Rome. The list that Luke is very particular about, of people upon whom the Spirit fell and filled up that day. These people living in fear, feeling very small, overwhelmed, silenced. The Spirit fell on them by name. These are also regions where U.S. soldiers have bled within our living memory. And then there's that speed bump again, who we speed over, who's rendered invisible. The far many more civilians, numbers we have not counted, numbers not reported. Then and now aren't too different. In 30 CE, the Roman authority conquered and reconquered, and not only that, they stamped the emperor's face on everything. Buildings, even money, everything. This year, the State Department issued commemorative passports with the president's image stamped on it. How many of you have seen it? Pictures. And I've been sitting in the places where I've traveled, imagining traveling and carrying one of those commencement passports and imagining how that would be received from a customs official who knows the violent power of this country. When they asked Jesus about who they should pay taxes to, God or Caesar? Jesus looked at a coin. Whose face is this? Whose image is this? And to whom do we actually belong? Even though this image is stamped on our buildings, stamped on our passports. Who has ultimate authority and claim over us? The question. So those people had come, despite the fear of the empire, from all over to Jerusalem to celebrate Shavuot, the Festival of Weeks, also the Harvest Festival, all these layers of meaning. And by the first century, the added meaning was the power of the Torah. Precisely at a time the people were being liberated from the oppression of slavery. They were in the wilderness. God's covenant with them. I am with you. And this layers one more meaning on top of that. This time, the Spirit doesn't just descend down one mountain, Mount Sinai, to one man, to Moses, to one group of people, to all of these people, silenced by an empire. All of these conquered people living in fear that need inspiration, that need to know they're in it together, to fill them with courage. And it happened everywhere. And they recall, this is what the prophet Joel had said. In those times that seem pretty apocalyptic, my Spirit will be poured out on all flesh, sons and daughters, rich and poor, slave free, all peoples, everyone, all at once. So, you know, the empire, they had soldiers there, just like they did at the Passover in Jerusalem. Because you know what happens? Especially after the execution of a rabbi whose body went missing, a popular rabbi of the people. Some said he was a revolutionary, executed by the state. And then there's this wind and fire. And in the original Greek, the language is parsan sarka. So sarka is the flesh. Parsan is all. Not just some, not just the initiated or the documented. All. Without exception. Sometimes I wonder, the Spirit inspired them to speak in languages that are understood, various languages, various cultures. What if the miracle is people, diverse groups of people, really start to understand one another, really start to listen to one another? Remember that we are human beings. Start to picture them. And it wasn't in Caesar's language, it wasn't in Latin, it was in their own. The ones their grandmas sang to them at night, lullabies, or the ones they whispered when they didn't want the empire to hear what they were saying. My sophomore year in college, I worked in Washington, D.C. as a congressional intern for the Subcommittee on Labor Standards, and I loved running then, just like I love it now. So that summer I was learning a lot about how the government decides what work matters, whose work matters, and whose safety counts. And so one afternoon I ran up and I saw the Vietnam War Memorial. And at first I wasn't sure who I was looking for. But then I remembered a few names. Robert Donovan was one. He was the oldest son of a large family, the Donovans, and I swam with Karen. She was the youngest. And I knew that her brother had been killed and how that impacted the family. And then I saw his name. And I put my fingers on his name and just stood there. And for those of you who haven't seen it, it's black granite and it's polished, so much so that you can see your own reflection in it. 58,000 names. What I couldn't do that day was feel much of anything for the 58,000 soldiers. It was beyond me. It was a statistic. It was in my head, I know it, but it hadn't really moved to my heart. And what I didn't do then, and couldn't imagine doing, because I knew the numbers, it was between 1 to 3 million Vietnamese people, mostly civilians. But information and grief aren't the same thing, are they? Information resides somewhere up here. Where in your body does grief reside? Here, here. It's physical. It's incarnate. $3 million people is still, it was still abstract to me, really. Someone else's loss. And I can remember the numbing experience. I was hanging out with my father, maybe like 8 or 9 years old. We'd watch the weekly news, NBC's reports on what was happening in Vietnam, U.S. troops, always U.S. troops. My father would be reading the Wall Street Journal and having his cheese and crackers, and it felt like something's wrong here. The invisibility of other people, and just names. But when it really hit me, I think all of us remember that picture from Life magazine of that little girl fleeing from the My Lai massacre. She's on fire, she doesn't know it yet. She's crying, she's screaming. Or that Buddhist monk in protest who's sitting as a flame consumes him, doing anything to get the attention of people here. The 3 million people always had faces. I just hadn't looked and really imagined. Those photos broke open my heart. It was more than information. It was a real, living human being, as real as any of us. There's so much I hadn't looked at. Remember Iraq? There's a catalog. Colin Powell holding a vial saying, this small vial at the United Nations, this is why we must go to war. Turns out that vial was empty. Somewhere between 100 and 500,000 Iraqis dead in a war built on nothing. Many of us marched against it, but I'd never wept. I couldn't deeply imagine. Somebody had to make it real. Gradually it would become real through stories. Through people I knew who knew someone. Think of Afghanistan. Children born the year we invaded, in their mid-20s now, same government in power as when it began. Yemen, Gaza, bombs manufactured here, school buses, hospitals, wedding tents. Try to imagine it. And Iran with the sanctions, where it makes it more difficult for medicine to get through. Collective punishment for so many innocent people. It's not only a political failure. Pentecost confirms what Joel had proclaimed. Every person, without exception, is filled with the Spirit. What was done in those countries was not merely political error. It was desecration. The divine lived in each one of these people. Every one of them. August 6, 1945, Hiroshima. 3 days later, Nagasaki. We are the only nation in the history of the world that has dropped nuclear weapons in war on 2 cities of civilians. My gut is really in pain. I was taught to understand it as strategy, as a difficult calculation, that it was going to save more lives. For the longest time, I was not taught how to grieve for these people. I was taught how to justify it. I could absorb the facts, discuss Hiroshima and Nagasaki without it feeling like a catastrophe. 210,000 people in seconds. Half of them instantly, the other half walked out slowly to die. And each one as real as Robert Donovan or Tyler's relative or the name of the person that Jim mentioned, or any one of our children or grandchildren or nieces and nephews, or any one of us. I had the information. I didn't have access to the grief of it. And there's a shame about that. It's particular. It's not the shame of being a bad person. It's the shame of someone discovering that knowing about something isn't the same as being changed by it. It's not malice. It's not ignorance. In part, I think my grief is built on this country's story, to mourn only the losses that fit inside the narrative of our own virtue. The dead who died because of us, not for us, because of us, hadn't moved from that part of the brain that collects facts and data to the part of the brain, the part of the body that grieves. It's changed by it. And that change is like the ground shifting beneath our feet. 7 weeks from now, our country turns 250 years old. All men are created equal. a reflex. Hand over heart. Remember saying the Pledge of Allegiance in school? I loved this country when I said those words, and I still do. The way you love something or someone when you can't stop hoping that it realizes the potential, the star to which it pointed, the hope of the promise fulfilled. But at some point, those words become questions. All men? All people? Who's creator? And what does it cost my own soul to ignore the narrowing of that vision as if it never happened? What we all had to give up was a certain kind of innocence, a certain kind of belonging, comfort over an uncomplicated story, hand over heart pride that now comes with an asterisk. It's real loss. And it's right loss. That question mark, that asterisk, isn't the enemy of love for this country. I think it's the opening of the kind of love that finally begins to move with courage to close the distance between the promise and the reality. Thomas Jefferson condemned slavery in the original draft of the Declaration of Independence. The Continental Congress voted it out. People being erased then were like the Parthians, the Mesopotamians. And Luke names them. The Spirit sees them. The Spirit fills them. Fills them even when religion divides them. Not just the baptized. All people are God's people. All. Peter's line later on in Acts, every Jew in the crowd that day knew it. The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. The great reversal. So it's not a birthday speech so much as a revolutionary speech, a political speech. It says no empire gets the last word. Not over the Vietnamese, the Iraqis, the Afghans, the Yemenis, the Iranians, the Palestinians. Not over the 210,000 in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Not over the Parthians. Before there was a doctrine or a name, these people were just called followers of the way. A practice, not a creed. And they recognized the Spirit on all flesh, and that's why they shared everything in common. Breaking bread across every human created line, distributing to each according to need, and refusing to let the empire claim them and stamp them as belonging to, ultimately, to Caesar. So on this weekend, let us take time to feel it, not escape it. Take it in. Parthians, the Medes, the Alamites. Say their names. The Vietnamese, the Iraqis, the Afghanis, Yemeni, Iranian, Japanese. Say them slowly. And let them move from your head to your heart, to your gut. Make it real. Because on the day the fire fell, they were all there. All those people. All are chosen, not just some. Every one of them, known to the Spirit long before Peter said a word. The Spirit is waiting for us to catch up. Amen.